Hi everyone. In the last session, we have seen the provisions of GST in respect of discount. What is the treatment of discount under GST law is what we have seen in the previous session. Now, going further, we just have to understand few more important points under GST. Let's look at the first issue that we discussed in respect of value of taxable supply of goods. And what is the issue in question now? We are trying to determine the value of taxable supply of goods or services. This is what we have been discussing from the last session. Now, the last point that we discussed, as I said just now, is about the treatment of discount under GST law. That is very clear to you. Now, in respect of discount, there is one more very important point which we need to understand from a theoretical perspective, and maybe there could be a small question also in the examination. This is quite an important aspect from the point of view of unjust enrichment. There is something called a doctrine of unjust enrichment. I don't know how many of you have heard this before, but definitely there is something called a doctrine of unjust enrichment. Now, whenever a discount is not given at the time of supply, and later on the amount equivalent to the discount amount is returned to the recipient of goods by the supplier, is there any instance of the doctrine of unjust enrichment becoming applicable in this case is what we need to discuss. Now, what is the case now? Please understand the case properly. At the time of supply, the discount has not been given, but however, at a later point of time, the discount is made good by the supplier to the recipient of goods, as it was earlier agreed between them, by means of either a credit note or a check. It means the discount is being given at a later date, either by means of a credit note or by means of a check to the recipient of the goods. And let's also be clear of the fact that we fulfill the condition of GST that this was an agreement between the buyer and the seller at the time of supply, but it was overlooked. Now, in such a case, when the refund is given to the buyer, the portion of amount that he received towards a discount which was not offered earlier, does that amount to an unjust enrichment of the buyer is the question. Now, the answer is it's very clearly established and accepted that there is no unjust enrichment happening in this case. Is that clear? So, you should be clear in the event of a small question being asked regarding this particular issue of discount being issued to the made good to the supplier at a later point of time, and whether it amounts to unjust enrichment, you just have to say that in such a case there is no unjust enrichment at all. Now, to understand the doctrine of unjust enrichment, let's understand the term unjust enrichment, what exactly this means. See, in respect of any contract, there are two parties who have got obligations between each other. Okay. Now, both the parties are required to fulfill their obligations towards each other, against which a certain amount of payment is made, which is called the consideration. Now, the point is if one party fulfills its obligation, one party fulfills its obligation and the other party does not, right? Now, a case of enrichment, unjust enrichment may arise. Now, in the present case, discount was agreed, but discount was not passed on to the buyer, and hence the same has been given by means of a check or a credit note to the buyer at a later stage. Now, the amount that is issued by the buyer is as per the agreed terms of contract, which was not fulfilled by the supplier at the time of supply of goods. So, which is made good at some point of time later. So, there is no question of any unjust enrichment happening here. So, this is one important aspect of discount. In the previous session, we have seen all the provisions of GST as they are applicable to the discount. But now, this is one important point you need to add, that see, doctrine of unjust enrichment does not apply in respect of a discount passed on to the buyer by the supplier at a later point of time by means of a credit note or check, whatever. Now, we move on to understanding the next important term, consideration. See, if you look at the value, what is the value that we have defined earlier? How have we defined? It is the transaction value we have seen. Go back to my previous sessions. You will realize that in the very first instance we have seen that what is value means the transaction value. And what is transaction value? It is the price which should be the sole consideration for supply. Price should be the sole consideration for supply is also what we have seen. So the word consideration as it is used under section 15(1) of CGST Act for defining the transaction value. Okay, now the word consideration has been used. The word consideration has been used here. Now let's try to understand what this consideration means, what it includes and what it does not include. Now the meaning of the term consideration, it has been defined, and hence I need to just read it out for you, and probably we take few explanatory points on that. Two issues. Consideration in relation to supply of goods or service or both to any person includes any payment made or to be made. Any payment made or to be made. Okay, whether in money or otherwise. See, it can be an instance where the payment has been already made, or it can be that the payment is agreed to be made but it has not yet been made. That is also covered. Now whether in money or otherwise, the consideration need not necessarily always be in the form of money. Even if it is not paid in money, then in whatever manner the transactions are made good to each other, even the other way in which it is done also is included within the scope of the word consideration for the purpose of its meaning. Okay, in respect of, or in response to, or for the inducement of. See, why be very particular about all these words. It's very important for you to understand the relevance of each of these words which are being used in this particular definition. If you look at the logic, behind using all these words, one thing what we can establish is that all different varieties in which the considerations can be met have been covered here. So that is the whole issue. I will read it completely for you, then we go ahead with the explanation further. Any payment made or to be made, whether in money or otherwise, in respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of the supply of goods or services or both, whether by the said person or by any other person, but shall not include any subsidy given by the central and state government. Now, the most important part is any type of arrangement where consideration, where benefit flows from one person to another, probably from the supplier of goods to the recipient of goods and vice versa, okay, is treated to be consideration. So all the different varieties in which a consideration may be passed on between each other have been covered here, and the whole definition has been so well worded. Okay, now what is important is, one thing that is excluded from the definition of consideration is, okay, or the meaning of consideration is, the subsidy given by central and state governments are not included at all. So in the event of a problem appearing in the exams where some amount of subsidy in central government or the state governments are also included in the problem, you should definitely exclude these subsidies received from the central and state government from the purview of defining the value. So value does not include, in other words, the word consideration does not include any subsidy received by the state or central government. Clear? Now look at the second part of consideration meaning. The monetary value of any act or forbearance. In the previous term we have seen any payment made or to be made. So the first condition talks of the payment made or to be made, again excluding the subsidy from the central or state government. But the second one says the monetary value, even the monetary value of an act or an act of forbearance. What is forbearance? Trying not to act on something is forbearance. See, I request you not to take certain decisions or not to act upon certain decisions, and you agree with that, and in between, because of this a consideration flow is there, still that will come as part of the value for the purpose of GST. So this is what they are trying to say: the monetary value of any act or forbearance in respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of the supply of goods or services or both, whether by the recipient or by any other person. Again, it shall not include any subsidy given by the central or state government. Okay, this is as per section 2 subsection 31 of the CGST Act. Now, what are the two things you need to keep in mind? Number one is the first portion talks of the payment made or to be made and covers all different varieties of the flow of consideration between the parties. The second talks of the monetary value of any act or forbearance. Please understand, there is no payment happening here, or there is no payment pending also in this particular case. The second issue does not talk of any kind of a payment at all, but however, the value, the monetary value, see, this is something which you need to do out of judgment in the given circumstances. So the monetary value of any act means it's a positive thing. I'm instructed to do something and I do it. So I take action on the instance of someone. but the act or forbearance means like it's a negative, it's on the negative side. Somebody instructs me not to do certain things and I accept that, so there's an act of forbearance from my side. So this is what is very important. So the monetary value of any act of forbearance in respect of or in response to the, again, the whatever I have told you earlier goes on. And then the further, finally he said the clause B would cover services of refraining from act or tolerating an act or situation. Please understand, even if the consideration is in the form of tolerating a particular act or a situation. Now let's say, because of the instance of someone, let's say X, I incurred some loss because of the instructions which I followed coming from Mr. A or Mr. X. I incurred a certain amount of loss. Now what is happening is, I bear this loss, I bear with the situation. So even in such a case, the value of this loss can be treated as value for the purpose of GST. Okay, the word would cover refraining from act or tolerating an act or a situation. So refraining, again both the aspects are involved. The first aspect is that you are instructed to do something and you do that, or something happens and you bear with that. Okay, and the other side is something does not happen which was supposed to happen and you still bear with that. So please understand the distinction and go ahead. Okay, now the next aspect of consideration is, it's common in respect of all the businesses to keep some deposit with the supplier and later on try to adjust that. Normally the word used is advance and not deposit. So now we are going to distinguish between these two from the point of view of GST law. Okay, again the proviso to section 231 of this, to subsection 31 of the CGST Act talks of these particular things. A deposit, whether refundable or not, given in respect of supply of goods or services or both, shall not be considered as payment made for the supply. See, if at all you keep in deposit with the supplier, the amount shall not be treated as consideration. It shall not be treated as consideration until and unless the supplier applies the deposit as consideration for the supply. It means the amount that has been received as a deposit has to be appropriated. It means it has to be adjusted against the transaction dues. Only then it will be treated as consideration. A mere deposit from the buyer with the supplier does not amount to consideration at all. So when it comes to deposit, it is but natural that obviously the first understanding that we get when we talk of any deposit is that the deposit is refundable. Whereas an advance for the supply of something, is always taken to be adjustable against the supplies, and the balance, if any, need to be paid. So this is the standard distinction between a deposit. A deposit is normally refundable, and an advance against supply is normally adjustable against the transaction dues. However, under GST law, even if you keep a deposit with someone, you are expecting a supplies to come from a certain company, and you have sent some amount to them as deposit, just to give them an assurance that you are sure to complete the transaction and you will not go back on your transaction. Let's say you keep some amount of deposit. Now, in the first instance, when the deposit is kept, for the transaction of deposit, it does not amount to consideration at all until such time the transaction is complete and this deposit is adjusted against the dues to be given to the supplier. So it becomes consideration at the time it is adjusted towards the transaction, and in the first instance of when the deposit is given, it does not amount to consideration. So this is the important aspect you need to keep in mind as far as deposit of consideration is concerned. Whether deposit is consideration in the first instance, it is not. But however, if the supplier appropriates it against the proceeds, it becomes a consideration. Okay. So another important point that you need to keep in mind is, whenever any advance is received under the GST law, even advance is covered for the purpose of payment of GST immediately. Even when you receive an advance, you are supposed to pay GST on the advance received. Now in such a scenario, it is more preferred to take the amount from the buyer as a deposit rather than advance, so that until the transaction is complete successfully, the question of payment of GST does not arise. But however, one caution we need to exercise here, and that is, if you are a company, if you are a company, except few type of companies, there are a lot of restrictions under the Companies Act of 56, now 2013. Okay, that it was 56, now it is, all of you know, it is Companies Act of 2013 now. So under the Companies Act, if at all the buyer or a seller is particularly the seller is a company, if the supplier is a company, then you should be very careful in accepting deposits. Otherwise, you will be sometimes contravening the provisions of Companies Act 2013. Private companies are not authorized to public deposits from public at all. So any deposit entries in your books tomorrow may become questionable under the Companies Act of 2013. So you should be very careful. Then as and when it would make better sense for you to take it as clear cut advance and discharge your liability for GST, because in any case you are going to pay the GST amount sooner or later, and the amount of money has already been received from the buyer, and out of that, if you have to be paying GST, that doesn't even amount to any sort of a pressure on your cash flows as well, because the amount has come and you are paying it, isn't it? So please understand the distinction between advance and deposit, and when they are treated as consideration. Deposit, I am concluding now, deposit when it is made with the supplier will not amount to any consideration at all. But however, when the supplier applies the deposit as consideration for the transaction that has materialized, then it becomes consideration. Is that clear?